Most people think they're prepared. A few cans in the pantry, a bag of rice at the back of the cabinet, a couple of extra bottles of water in the garage, and if something actually happened, a serious storm, a long power outage, store shelves suddenly emptying out when they open the pantry, most people notice the same thing. Too late. The problem isn't that the food isn't there. It's that the right food was never there to begin with. This video covers 12 products you can find at Walmart, each chosen for a concrete reason, shelf life, nutritional role, real usability in an actual crisis, or all three at once. The last one isn't just the cheapest item on this list. It's the single ingredient that ties everything together, the foundation that professional emergency food systems around the world are built on. You'll want to stay to the end. I don't want to leave you with only half the picture. Picture a family of 4. The grocery bill climbs a little higher every month, but no one knows exactly why. They just say, everything's gotten so expensive. These 12 items remove exactly that uncertainty, a foundation that can be gathered steadily and cheaply, that lasts for years, before prices climb further and before the shelves empty out. We'll come back to this family a few times throughout the video. There's one more thing right before we get into the list. If this information is genuinely useful to you, do 3 things at once. Hit the like button, write something below, it doesn't have to be long, even a single thanks is enough. And if you don't want to miss content like this, subscribe. All 3 together won't even take 10 seconds, but they directly decide how many more people this video reaches. The first item is a product most people get fundamentally wrong. Item 12, yeast. Most people file yeast under one of those unnecessary things sitting in a corner of the baking aisle, a product used a couple of times a month. That category is wrong, and that mistake can cause people to lose one of the most genuinely useful stockpile items they could have. Think about it. You've got flour stocked, you've got water, you've got salt, but if you don't have yeast, all you're left with is wet dough, not bread. Dry yeast, when stored properly, in a cool, dry, light-free sealed container, ideally in the fridge or freezer, can stay alive for years. Unopened packets can hold their activity for up to 2 years, even at room temperature. And in frozen storage, that window stretches much longer. At Walmart, a small packet runs around $2 to $4. A common mistake, people don't think to buy and store yeast. But in a crisis, it's one of the first things to run out, because no one stocks it ahead of time. Experienced preppers grab a few extra packets each time and rotate them through the pantry, because with a small investment, they close a big gap. Let me add one more thing. Don't put too much faith in the date printed on the yeast packet. That date is usually for best freshness, not unusable. There's a simple test to check whether the yeast is still alive. Stir a pinch of yeast into warm water, as warm as your hand can stand, not boiling, with a pinch of sugar, and wait 10 minutes. If it foams, the yeast is still active and usable. If it doesn't foam, it's time to toss that packet and buy a new one. Doing this test once a year is a free way to make sure your stock is actually good. Apply the same test when you're buying in bulk. A big packet may look appealing because it's cheap, but the moment you open it, the clock starts ticking. So refreshing small packets often makes more sense than relying on one big packet. Item 11, canned tomatoes. Here we run into a problem most people never factor in when building a stockpile. And this problem can quietly undermine everything else. The problem won't be running out of calories. The problem is that the food stops feeling like food. When a diet gets stuck for days, for weeks, in the same rice, beans, plain protein rotation, something measurable happens that nutrition researchers call appetite fatigue. Not a lack of hunger, but a slow reluctance to keep going with the repetition, even when there's plenty of food in front of you. A single can of tomatoes can break that pattern. Its acidity, moisture, and flavor can transform dry goods in a way that almost nothing else can. At this price point, plain beans become a stew. Pasta gains a sauce. At Walmart, a standard can is $1 to $2, and it holds its quality for 18 to 24 months, in good conditions, often longer in undamaged cans at a stable temperature. A practical note. Because tomatoes are high acid, they need real rotation, not the occasional shelf check keep consuming and replacing on a first in, first out basis, and never keep cans that are seriously dented, bulging, or leaking. Nutritionally, tomatoes are an overlooked powerhouse too. They contain lycopene, an antioxidant. The body actually absorbs more effectively from cooked tomatoes than raw, plus vitamin C and micronutrients. The kind of nutrients that get harder and harder to find during a stretch of weeks when fresh vegetables aren't available. Think about it. Even if you have rice, beans, and canned meat all on hand, if you eat the same 3 things bare all week, the weariness starts as early as the 3rd day. A can of tomatoes can bring those three items together in a single sauce and make it feel like a genuinely cooked meal in a long-term food stock. Flavor isn't a comfort detail, it should be one of the things that keeps the stockpile psychologically sustainable. Item 10. Peanut butter. Picture the 8th hour of a power outage. No stove, no fire, but everyone needs calories to get through the night. No prep, no cooking, no cleanup, the entire strength of peanut butter is in that one sentence. A standard jar provides protein, healthy fat, and high calories, instantly accessible, with no equipment required. Protein and fat together provide a slow-burning energy that keeps you full much longer than carbohydrates alone. No sudden crash, no getting hungry again an hour later. For families with kids, there's something else that matters: familiarity. In a stressful, unstable situation, a familiar flavor carries real psychological weight, especially for children. Peanut butter pairs with almost everything on this list. It can be spread on flatbread, stirred into oats, and combined with honey, it becomes a high-calorie meal in under a minute. At Walmart, it's around $4 a jar, offering one of the lowest calorie-to-price ratios on the store shelf. An important buying distinction: natural, organic peanut butter has fewer stabilizing additives, which leads to the oil separating faster, and a shorter shelf life once opened for long-term stock. Standard commercial peanut butter is the more stable choice, and unopened jars hold their quality for 18 to 24 months when stored cool and dry. Let's add this too. Peanut butter does something almost nothing else on this list can do on its own. It can make a complete meal with zero cooking, zero prep, zero waiting. Even if there's no electricity, no gas, no time or safety to build a fire, a spoonful of peanut butter on flatbread, or a spoonful straight from the jar, becomes the most practical calorie source in that moment. That's exactly why it's the one item found in almost every emergency go bag. Item 9. Salt. Before we get into the item, think about this. Someone in the middle of summer, in a house without power for 3 days, doing physical work outside. What they're losing through sweat isn't just water, it's sodium too, and drinking water alone doesn't make up for that loss, and can sometimes even make it worse. No product on this list does this much work for this little cost. A large package of salt comes to under $1 at Walmart, and as long as it's kept dry, its shelf life is practically unlimited. But salt's real value isn't about flavor. Salt is an essential electrolyte the body needs for nerve transmission, muscle contraction, and heart rhythm in hot weather or heavy physical work. Sodium loss happens fast, and if it isn't replaced, it moves from fatigue to cramps and on toward more serious problems. Its second function is older. Long before refrigerators, humanity used salt to preserve meat, fish, and vegetables across seasons. If a freezer stops and the meat inside starts to thaw, the ability to salt and dry that meat can be the difference between losing that food and keeping it usable for a few more days. A distinction worth knowing. 2 types for 2 purposes. Iodized table salt for daily nutrition, iodine, a micronutrient that's hard to find in a simplified diet, and rock, sea salt for food preservation, iodine, can degrade the color and taste of pickled and brined foods over time. The two together stay under $5. There's also a behavior pattern worth knowing. Before every big storm or weather event, the first products to disappear from store shelves are usually the ones people least expect. Salt is one of them. Even though it's almost unlimited under normal conditions, it runs out fast on the shelves like water and batteries, not because it's scarce, but because millions of households reach for the same shortlist at the same time, and local distribution can't keep up with that demand. The right time to buy salt isn't when the forecast comes out, it should be now. Item 8. Honey. The only truly never spoils food item on this list. Archaeologists excavating ancient tombs in Egypt found sealed jars of honey over 3,000 years old, still chemically unspoiled, still edible. This isn't a myth, it's a repeatedly verified, documented scientific finding. The reason is clear. Honey's moisture content is very low, its natural sugar concentration is very high, and it's mildly acidic. These 3 properties together create an environment where almost nothing, bacteria or mold, can survive. Beyond shelf life, honey is also a fast energy source. When the body is under stress, little sleep, irregular meals, heavy physical demand, it needs quick fuel, and a spoonful of honey provides a simple carbohydrate the body absorbs almost instantly with no preparation required. At Walmart, a jar of raw honey runs $6 to $9. A common mistake. After a few years of storage, honey turns cloudy and hardens, and people think it's spoiled and throw it out. That's wrong. This is called granulation, a natural process seen in quality raw honey, and putting the jar in warm water for a few minutes turns it back to liquid without losing anything. Beyond energy, honey has a documented history of wound care too, thanks to its antibacterial properties. It has traditionally been used on minor wounds and to soothe a sore throat. This is the one food item that isn't just a kitchen ingredient, but has also served as a small first aid tool. This dual role has existed throughout history too, in ancient Greece, and Rome honey was applied directly to wounds, and in medieval Europe it was used from the same jar as both a sweetener and a medicine. Even modern medicine hasn't abandoned this entirely. Some hospitals still use medical-grade honey in wound dressings because the high sugar concentration and low pH physically make it hard for bacteria to multiply. Item 7. Oatmeal. Cheap, quick to prepare, and when stored dry and cool, it keeps for years without spoiling. Unopened packages last 1 to 2 years at room temperature. And in sealed packages with an oxygen absorber, that window stretches much longer. At Walmart, a large bag comes to a few dollars, one of the most efficient calorie-to-price ratios per kilogram. Oats' real strength is in ease of preparation. They only need hot water. And even in a scenario with no electricity or gas, they can be made with hot water kept in a thermos, which can't be said for every item on this list. It's a filling, calorie-dense item that can cover a family's morning. And combined with powdered milk or honey, its nutritional value multiplies. Small variations like adding honey, cinnamon, or dried fruit on top of oats are a cheap solution that delays the appetite fatigue we mentioned a few items ago. Oats have one more little-known advantage: even the cooking water doesn't go to waste. The starchy water left after cooking oats can be added directly to soups or other dishes, so nothing gets poured away. This is the kind of detail that makes a small but real difference in a period when resources are limited. Item 6. Canned meat, fish. So far, we've leaned heavily on carbohydrates, and sweeteners. Protein was missing. At the 12th hour of a power outage, when everything in the fridge has turned from a resource into a problem, the cans in the cabinet sit there unaffected by any of it. That's the real strength of canned meat, fish. Not that it's the tastiest protein, but that it's the one protein that keeps its full function no matter what. Canned tuna, salmon, and chicken provide complete protein, all the essential amino acids the body can't make itself, in a single serving. A can of meat, fish added to rice or beans turns that meal from a carbohydrate base into a nutritionally complete meal. At Walmart, a can runs $2 to $6 and lasts 3 to 5 years in cool, dry conditions, usually longer if the seal is intact. A point to watch: most canned meat is high in sodium, and in a situation where clean water is also limited, high sodium raises the body's water need at exactly the wrong time, so it makes sense to balance with low sodium options. And not to rely on a single type, but to diversify among tuna, salmon for omega-3, and chicken for versatility. A storage note: never place cans directly on a concrete floor. Moisture that builds up on concrete over time speeds up rusting on the bottom of the can. Keep them on a shelf or wooden pallet, cool and dry, and check regularly for damage. One more thing most people skip: instead of pouring out the water, oil inside the can, especially in tuna, save it. That liquid, added to soup or rice, offers both flavor and a calorie source that would be needlessly wasted. In a long-term stock, remember that nothing is really leftover. Before we move on, I need to say one more thing of the items so far. Whichever surprised you the most, write it in one word right now. For example, just writing honey or yeast is enough. It takes 2 seconds, and it genuinely helps me understand who this content is reaching. Item 5. Canned powdered milk. Picture the first evening of a long power outage. The lights are out, the fridge has been slowly warming for hours. A parent opens the door and realizes the milk is gone. With a small child waiting who wants milk before bed, that family wasn't unprepared in general. That one item just wasn't there. Powdered milk is one of the rare shelf-stable products that can fill this gap with just clean water. It stands in directly for fresh milk. A single package provides calcium, protein, vitamin D, and B12 in a constrained diet. These aren't optional, they're essential nutrients, especially critical for children and the elderly. At Walmart, a package of non-fat powdered milk is around $15 to $25, sealed in mylar bags with an oxygen absorber and stored cool and dry. It holds its quality for 10 to 20 years, a window no other milk product comes close to. An important buying detail: definitely choose the non-fat version. Full-fat powdered milk spoils much faster because fat is the first component to break down in long storage. When a package is opened, you need to immediately divide the contents into smaller mylar bags, add an oxygen absorber, seal them, and keep them away from light and heat. The goal is to minimize the portion of your stock exposed to air at any given time. Its use isn't limited to drinking. It can be stirred into oats, cake, and cookie dough, mashed potatoes, and creamy soups, and a single package turns into the equivalent of several gallons of milk, a serious nutritional return for a compact storage footprint. This should be added too. Powdered milk should be thought of not just as milk, but as a nutrient multiplier. Adding a spoonful of powdered milk to a meal that's already weak in calories, say a plain soup, raises its protein and calcium value significantly without increasing the volume. Almost at all, especially for growing children, this works like a hidden nutritional supplement. Item 4. Sugar. Not just a sweetener, it acts as a natural preservative in making jam and preserves. And it's also a fast calorie source. Thanks to its crystal structure, almost no microorganism can live inside it. So as long as it doesn't take on moisture, its shelf life is practically unlimited. You could call it the most trouble-free item in the pantry. At Walmart, a large sack comes to a few dollars, one of the cheapest calories per kilogram. Proper storage has just one rule: moisture. Don't leave it in the original paper or plastic packaging. Transfer it to a tightly sealed jar or a sealed container. Sugar has one more overlooked use. Making a simple syrup by boiling equal parts sugar and water and cooling it and storing fruit or vegetables in that syrup can extend the life of fresh produce by weeks, even without a refrigerator. This is a method grandmothers used long before refrigerators, and it still works. Item 3. Vegetable oil. Here we enter the real center of gravity of the list. When people plan an emergency stock, they almost always leave oil for last, or often don't think of it at all. Water, protein, carbohydrates, and if oil comes to mind, it's as an afterthought. That ordering creates a gap that most stockpiles quietly carry. Vitamins A, D, E, and K are fat-soluble. The body can only absorb them if there's fat in the same meal. A stock full of canned vegetables, legumes, and grains, but without an adequate oil source, gives you only part of the nutritional value those foods actually carry. Oil is also the macronutrient with the highest calorie density that can be stored about 9 calories per gram, more than double that of carbohydrates or protein. At Walmart, refined vegetable oil or olive oil holds its quality for 18 to 24 months when kept in a dark bottle, cool and dark. The 3 things that speed spoilage are light, heat, and air. A dark bottle, a tight cap, a cool and dark place between uses, that's the entire storage protocol. One more detail worth knowing: Spain, Italy, and Greece, which produce most of the world's olive oil, have had repeated extreme heat and drought in recent years. When the harvest drops in these regions, global supply tightens and prices react quickly, with very little warning before it reaches the shelves. It's the kind of product a family uses every day, but no one thinks to stock most of the other items can't fully turn into a meal without oil. Item 2. Rice. Known as the backbone of stockpiling, and not for nothing, choose only white rice. Brown rice goes rancid much faster because of its natural oils, dropping its storage life to 6 to 12 months, no matter how good the conditions. Placed in a mylar bag, sealed with a properly sized oxygen absorber, and set in a 5-gallon food-grade bucket, white rice can hold its quality for 25 to 30 years, according to documented testing. This number isn't an optimistic estimate, it's real test data from long-term food storage researchers. At Walmart, large bags come incredibly cheap per kilogram, which makes it the item with the highest volume to price ratio on this list. But rice's real power isn't on its own. It emerges when combined with the final item you'll see shortly. One more technical detail worth knowing: oxygen absorber capacity must be chosen correctly for the volume. Using absorbers with insufficient capacity for a 5-gallon bucket leaves residual oxygen in the bucket, which shortens storage life and lets some insects and microorganisms survive. Don't estimate this. Match the capacity exactly to the bucket volume. Item 1. Dry beans, lentils. This is the item I told you to stay for. And it's probably not what you think, not a luxury or special product, but the opposite, the plainest, most unassuming item on the list: dry beans and lentils. If you look at the stock lists of disaster relief organizations, military preparedness systems, and long-term survival communities around the world, you'll find real differences in nearly every category: different protein sources, different fat sources, different approaches to micronutrients. But at the foundation of almost all of them, without exception, is one of the same two ingredients: rice and dry legumes. Dry beans and lentils provide protein more cheaply than any other item of the same weight can, and when stored properly, dry, sealed, dark, with an oxygen absorber, they can stay unspoiled for periods exceeding 10 years. At Walmart, a bag comes to a few dollars, the cheapest calorie-protein combination on this list. Rice plus beans plus a spoonful of oil plus a bit of salt. With 4 items, a family of 4 can be fed for days, and with the right rotation, for weeks. The other items build on top of this base, but without these 4, none of them can hold a family up on its own. That's exactly why on the list of experienced preppers, this item sits not at the bottom, but at the top. Dry beans have another advantage: conserving water and cooking fuel. Dried beans require hours of soaking and long cooking, but this can be balanced with ready canned beans. And keeping both together, canned for quick use, dry for long-term volume, is the most solid approach. Closing. None of this requires a dramatic lifestyle change. No special setup, no wholesale membership, no expensive equipment beyond Mylar bags and oxygen absorbers, and those are very cheap per unit. 2 items this month, 2 more next month, kept up steadily over 6 months. You'll have built something that even most people who take this seriously still haven't quite put together. The total cost of these 12 items doesn't even exceed an average family's 1-week grocery bill, but the return lasts for years. Picture this. An emergency alert drops on your phone one morning. You look outside. Lines have formed in front of the nearest store. People are filling their carts with everything left on the shelves. There's a visible rush. You turn back to your kitchen. You open the pantry. Everything is already there. It's been there for months. Yeast, canned tomatoes, peanut butter, salt, honey, oats, canned meat, powdered milk, sugar, oil, rice, beans, each on its own shelf, in its own order. None of it bought in a last-minute panic. You don't have to join those lines. You don't have to compete with anyone for the last things left. Your family has time. You have real options. While most people around you are reacting, you're someone who is already quietly prepared. Which of these 12 items is already sitting in your pantry? And which one are you adding this month? Write it below. It helps me know what to cover next. Subscribe to Stockpile Man here. We talk about what's real.